Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julie Taylor. I'm the Director of Education and Training for CWEA. And we wanted to welcome you to this second webinar for Annual Conference 2016, which is just less than 10 days away. We are doing these as part of our endeavor to engage our audience more and to develop more of a 21st century learning model for the organization. Jeff Hurd is joining us today. He is our speaker and presenter. If you've been at Annual for the last few years, you met Jeff. He is education extraordinaire, and he's been really helping us engage our audience and improve our content. A few housekeeping tips before I turn it over to Jeff. We have muted all the lines. To ask a question or to want to let us know you have a comment, then please use the question function, and Jeff and I can both monitor those. We are recording this webinar so that we can share it with speakers who were unable to be here today, and we're getting the links for that webinar as well as the slide deck Jeff is going to be using, some speaker tips, and some tools that he's come up with to help you as you prepare your PowerPoints and your presentations for Annual Conference. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now, and once again, Jeff is with Velvet Chainsaw, and Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks, everybody. Let me make myself the presenter here. Here we go. Show my screen. We're going to talk about igniting participant learning, how to ignite the learning that's happening in your presentations using research-based strategies for technical presentations. I'd like to know right off the bat, where in the world are you? Go over here on the right-hand side. You can use the question box or the chat box and type in, where in the world are you? And tell us what your weather's like. Where in the world are you? And tell us what your weather's like. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and it's a little bit overcast. We're expecting a lot of rain this weekend, a whole lot of rain. And they're already putting out the flood warning. Like, it's not even started raining yet. So where are you? Okay. See lots of things coming in here. San Rafael, California, sunny and 60s. Phoenix, 80 degrees and blue skies. Okay. San Jose, it's about 70. Rained a bit today. Okay. Let's see if there's any more that come in. Thank you for those of you that are participating. We greatly appreciate it. Your level of learning in this presentation is going to be directly related to your level of engagement. So I'm going to move on here. If you see me present, you know what's coming. I want to thank you for your engagement, your mental engagement, for your time, for your energy. I want to do an agreement with you. Hope you'll make the same agreement with me. Believe in the law of the click. If the presentation veers in a direction that doesn't meet your needs, feel free to click on out of here and do something else. It's my job to become more engaging than any distraction that comes your way. Put those mobile devices on vibrate, please. This is a session where social sharing, typing, texting, taking notes, sharing with others is completely welcome. Let's make understanding our goal. And I'm going to declare that this is a safe space to agree, disagree, ponder, and question. And finally, you get a free pass, and you can use this free pass as frequently and as often as you like. Here's a little bit about me, so I feel when I wake up in the mornings. There's some information about myself. The presentation is really about you. It's not about me. Some of the organizations I've worked for government, I've worked for nonprofits, and I've worked for for-profits. And I work for Velvet Chainsaw Consulting. About you, it's your turn. Type in on the right-hand side for me. Who was your favorite teacher and why? Who was your favorite teacher and why? I'd like to know who was your favorite teacher and why. Type them in on the right-hand side. Who was your favorite teacher and why? I'll tell you who mine was. One of mine is Miss Jamison, and she was my 4th grade teacher. I went to an open classroom school, so the entire 4th floor was 4th graders. There were hundreds of us, hundreds and hundreds of us. And it was a new concept in the education world. I loved it, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I had a blast there. It was really great for somebody like myself who likes learning. So let's see what some of you said. We have Robert Lord, he was a mathematics teacher. Mr. Henderson was fun and engaging. Real-world examples and interaction. Mrs. Wong, 4th grade, she taught me how to say Happy New Year in Chinese. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Well, maybe I will. Gong Hei Fat Chao. I probably butchered it, but that was kind of fun. My physics teacher in high school because he was entertaining while educating. Somebody yesterday said their chemistry teacher because he allowed them to blow things up. which was kind of fun. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to explore how to identify content that meets the business case and aligns with your learning outcomes. We're going to compare and contrast active and passive learning strategies. We'll identify 3 categories of active learning exercises and which ones are best for your technical presentations. So there they are. They're my 3 learner outcomes. Take a look at the 3 of them. Which one of these 3 interests you the most and why? If you'll type it on the right-hand side, 1, 2, or 3. Which one of them interests you the most and why? Which one of them interests you the most and why? Okay, we got a number 3 coming in. See how things are applied. Okay, number 2. All right. See if there's anybody else willing to share with us what they think. Another number 3. Less words, help others learn from my presentation talk. Okay. Number 1, because I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Yeah, and when you don't know and it kind of intrigues you, that the brain's telling you, let's find out more about that. Thanks for sharing that, Steve. Okay, so why we picked number 2. So let's move on here. So why would this presentation be important to you? What's the magic carrot? What's in it for you? Well, you probably have this much content to teach, right? And you have this much time. Now, isn't that interesting how I use pictures to help you understand where we're all coming from? Here's some of the resources for this presentation. If you're really into presentations, and I prefer learning over training anymore, but these are kind of older books that start the word training in them. Here's some of them. And so here's what we know. Sitting, listening, and observing a class is called passive learning. Now that term passive learning is really an oxymoron. It really should be called passive listening because it doesn't lead to any learning. Julie's going to share with you an NPR recording from yesterday and an article that a Nobel laureate has come out and said, basically he said yesterday, if you're lecturing to your class, whether it's adults, children, or students, you're using bloodletting techniques from the 17th and 18th century because we now know the lecture is the equivalent to bloodletting. In other words, meaning the lecture has no value when it comes to learning, just like bloodletting did not have any value in helping somebody get over an illness. And so this whole thing of sitting, listening, observing is just kind of a misnomer, but it's what we've all sat through and we felt we learned, it's what we're comfortable with, it's what we know. So what do you think if passive listening is often called passive learning, what do you think active learning is? Type in on the right-hand side your thoughts about what you think active learning is. What do you think active learning is? Give you a couple seconds to do that. Doing, that's a great one. Yep, doing it. Thanks, Lance, for sharing that. When the students participate, yep, no matter what age they are, they participate. Yep, thank you for sharing that one, Steve. Give you a couple more seconds. Participants are involved in practicing and applying concepts, engagement, participating, providing feedback. Yep. Give and take within the audience. Oh, that's a good one too. Thanks for sharing those. Appreciate it. So, active learning is the opposite of passive learning. Active learning involves participation in activities. It involves doing something. Active learning compels the learner to engage in the subject matter itself. Just listening does not really engage the learner with the content. Do you recall the 100% lecture course? Describe it for us. How did you feel with the 100% lecture course? What was it like? Tell us on the right-hand side what you think the 100% lecture course is like. Describe it. What do you think? It stunk. Snooze or not there, yeah. Physics 101, awful, ugh, yeah. Absolutely. Anybody else? We'll see if anybody else has anything to add to this. You know, if you liked them, that's okay. You can say that too. Good, but required a lot of outside work. It sure did, because you know you may have enjoyed it, and there's some people who are wonderful at presenting lectures, speeches, orators. They're just really good at storytelling, and we're engaged with that. But we still have to learn the content one way or another. Lectures are often mind-numbing. The speaker talks continuously. Often the only break in the monotony is the click of the PowerPoint slide or the ticking hum of the slowly moving wall-hung clock. And oftentimes that clock is at the back of the room for the presenter to see. And I've sat through some sessions where I can hear that tick, 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 and I'm like, oh, this is going to be long and boring. It is a myth that telling equals learning. It is a myth. There's a huge difference between the learner listening to information and the learner acquiring information through sense-making. Huge difference to listening and making sense of it. The lecture is grossly overrepresented, and its ROI is more for the speaker than it is for the learner. The ROI of the lecture is for the speaker because we feel good. We put it into a process. We put it into a flow. We covered all our content, and we feel great. But when it comes down to it, we design it for ourselves. We actually don't design it for their learning. Of course you need some lecture or direct instruction in your presentation. Of course you do. However, that lecture must be managed properly. And we have to figure out how much and when and why. So here's some brain research regarding learning. Number one, the learner's retention is the greatest for information at the beginning and the end of the presentation. The learner's retention is the greatest for information at the beginning and the end. So the other thing is, don't necessarily design your technical presentation as linear. We don't learn linear. Now, if it's a step-by-step process, then that's got to be linear. Or you leave some steps out on purpose and ask them, well, are we missing something? What needs to come first? We'll get into that here in a second. But put content that's important up front and content that's important at the end. Learner's attention span is 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So you want to chunk your content. When possible, chunk the content into 10-minute segments, followed by 2-minute activities such as thinking, reflecting, writing, talking, etc. Now, you probably already have your presentation done. And if you do, what I suggest, can you find 2 places within your presentation where you can do these 2-minute activities? Can you give up 5 minutes? If you have a 60-minute presentation, think of it as 5 10-minute content, and then you got 10 minutes to play with. Can you find 2 places where you can do 5 minutes and let the audience think, write, and share, or think about it, or write it down, or an exercise? Sure you can. Sure you can do that. Sure you can cut some content out. Don't feel stressed that you need to totally reinvent yourselves. Activity is crucial for any presentation, especially technical presentations. Activity is more critical for technical presentations than anything else. So what type of activity should a technical presentation use? What do you think? Write for me on the right-hand side, what type of activity should a technical presentation use? What should the audience do for a technical presentation? Think about that, wrestle with it, and type in the answers. Think about it, wrestle with it, type in your thoughts. What type of activity should a technical presentation use? Okay, we have some comments coming in. Discussions, case studies, answer a question from the presenter by raising hand, standing up, apply activities to their own situation and jobs. Those are some good ones. Ask how the discussion relates to their work or life. That's a really good one. Ask how it relates to them personally. So, simple answer is any and all activities that help you meet the learning objective. So we have some more share experiences, polls, discuss with other attendees. Yep. Simple answer, anything that helps you meet the learning objectives. Worksheets, review questions, peer discussions, brainwriting, case studies, reflective exercises, etc. Take a look at this photo. This photo is actually a picture from Second Life. Now here we have avatars, virtual people in Second Life having a discussion around a discussion table. Isn't that interesting that we're still modeling even having that discussion right there in Second Life? So here comes the 3 types of active learning exercises. Here are 3 types of active learning exercises, especially for technical presentations. Number 1, response-oriented exercises. Response-oriented exercises. Obviously, the word response-oriented there is critical. Response-oriented exercises mean that the technical presenter poses some sort of question or subject for discussion, and the learner must come up with a response. Now, this just isn't one-on-one where one person raises their hand and answers. Everybody needs to do this, so you have to figure out how you do this. You pose the question, and you may say to them, think about this, write down or type your answer or think about your answer. Give them 60 seconds to think about it. If it's highly complex, you want to give them more time to think about it, and then tell them to turn to the neighbor on the right or the left and share it. Generic type language for these questions. List the items that you need. Analyze this task. What steps do we need to take to get to here? If you're doing a technical process and a software, you may want to say to them, what steps do you need to get to this point? And find out what they know or what they might already know with the procedure. Describe what can go wrong. Talk to them about what challenges may hinder them or where they can come to barriers. What additional information do you need before you can do this task? Describe the concept just covered in the lecture. A great one is if you're doing a process step by step, go through 5, 6 steps, stop, and then say, we'd like you to think it through and turn to your neighbor on your right or your left, give you 60 seconds to tell them the steps you need to take to get to X. Here's an interesting question. How will novice professionals have trouble with this concept? Maybe flip it. How will veterans be able to easily do this concept? What do they know that novices need to know? Here's another one. Visually depict this conference. So there's the first category of types of activities. The language is broad. It can apply to almost any subject matter. They're easy to prepare. They're relatively easy to do. They don't take a lot of complex information or complications. Now B, exercises that are very specific to a technical topic and more detailed than the type A. So let's look at these. These activities direct learners to specific learning points in the technical presentation. They direct them to a very specific step or process or situation, environment. And then C, these activities take the course content and consider how to apply it to a specific job. This is where we really want to go, because let's try to remember this. Forgetting is easy, remembering is hard. So anytime you can take the course content, and a question came, or the comment came up earlier, how do you apply this to your job? That's a beautiful question to ask somebody in the audience, because it makes them wrestle with, okay, what do I do with this? And if they come back, well, I don't know, you say to them, go ahead, try. Try first, wrestle with it. What do you think? If they say, well, I don't know, oftentimes they're afraid to answer because they're looking for the right answer. They think you're looking for the right answer, and they're afraid of failure. And it's better to let them try some things in their mind than actually to try it on the job if there's risk associated. So these type C are often referred to as case study exercises. They're best suited for transfer of the content to the actual physical job. An example is an if-then scenario. They include 2 stages of a quasi-open-ended choice. Oh, if this happens and this, then what happens? This is really where we want to take people so we can see if they can apply the content. The learner is to identify the possible consequences and then the decision made along with the action taken based on those consequences. These are the great things to do with your attendees. Come up with some if-then statements. Now, these take a little bit of work on your part, but if you're just going to change 20%, sure, you can come up with 2 or 3 of these that you can lob to the audience and let them wrestle with it. So I'm going to stop there. Of these, type A, type B, type C, What's your takeaway of these types of activities for presentations? What's your takeaway about them? Type A, Type B, Type C. And Type A is really open-ended, vague. Type B is a little bit more complex. Type C, case studies, if-then statements. What are you going to do with this? What's your takeaways from this about using active learning in your presentation? Give you a couple seconds to type in some thoughts over here. What are your takeaways from this? So, okay. Here we go. The more I can integrate the active learning options, the more memorable my presentation will be. I need to consider how to use these techniques, yes. And actually, the more they'll remember to be able to apply it. So there was two great comments. Craft a presentation using a mix of the three. Oh, that's a good one. As appropriate. Take them through the process. That's really good. How can you go from the easy to the harder? Really good. So here's another one. Knocking down all the dominions is a successful conclusion. Love that, Lance. Yes, thank you. Great analogy there from right off the page. So why in the world would this part about business outcomes? Because I threw something at you, said it was one of the learner outcomes, and somebody said, I'm not real sure I know what to do here. We have another comment that's come in. I want to. The think gap every 10 minutes is very doable for my presentation. Yeah, it actually is. It actually gives us a nice framework, Steve, to chunk it and really be thinking about, okay, if I have 60 minutes, maybe I have 5 points I need to cover, or can I cover 2 in a 10-minute span? And it really helps put that into some perspective for us. So the only reason that learning organizations exist is to drive business outcomes. Bottom line, the only reason learning organizations exist is to drive business outcomes. Organizations invest in education with the goal of improving performance in areas critical to their strategy and their objectives. So now we're getting into this whole concept of learning is related to business improvement and performance. These education offerings are valued to the extent which they visibly and convincingly contribute to improved performance. So your presentation is going to be valued to the extent which it visibly and convincingly contributes to improved performance. When our learning opportunities consume resources, time and money, and fail to demonstrably improve performance, they are wasteful and expendable. We have a term for it in the education world. We call it learning scrap. Focusing on the business outcomes repositions your presentation, your involvement as a strategic business partner, and failing to clearly define the business outcomes dramatically increases the pouring of time, effort, and money into programs that don't succeed. So what do we need to know in order to develop learning programs that meet our audience business outcomes? Business outcomes are a little bit different than learning outcomes, and we're going to talk about this. What do you need to know in order to develop learning programs that meet your audience's business outcomes? Type in what your thoughts are. What do you need to know to develop learning programs that meet our audience's business outcomes? Give you a couple seconds to wrestle with that one. What do you think? Their goals and their objectives. Yeah. Keep them awake and coming back. Okay. Yeah. But those are good. You need to know the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve to be able to design the learning outcomes. Ooh, that's brilliant. We need to know the audience's business outcomes, yeah? Where the audience is, it challenges. What do they want to learn or change? And oftentimes we need to know the audience's supervisor's intentions. What is it they're hoping to improve? Why did they send these people to this presentation or to this conference? What's their goal? What are they hoping? If it's just to get CEs, that's a little bit different, but it normally is more than just to get CEs. So here's what we need to know. We need to understand the business function that the presentation supports. The business function the presentation supports. Now, have you even thought about that? Your presentation, what business function does it support? We need to talk to the stakeholders. We often talk to the learners, and sometimes we need to talk to the learners' stakeholders. We need to talk to their bosses. We need to talk to the public. We need to talk to government. We need to decide whether an education program is appropriate for that, and we need to differentiate the business objectives from the learning objectives. We need to make sure that they're different, the business objectives from the learning objectives. How do you think learning objectives are different from business objectives? Give you a couple of seconds to type in some responses to me on the right-hand side. How do you think learning objectives are different from business objectives? What do you think? Give you a couple seconds here. Now, there's about a 10-second delay sometimes. Okay, things are coming in. Business objectives are the targets, and the learning objectives are the methods to get there. That's an interesting way to put it. I like that one. What you learn may not be financially responsible. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Okay. See if anybody else has anything coming in. Give you a couple more seconds. Yep, here's some more. About where people are at various about where people are versus where they fit within the organization. Okay. A need solved is a benefit achieved. If you meet the business objectives, you'll achieve learning. Okay. So let's look at this. Use the business objectives to explain the benefits of the program. Use the business objectives to explain the benefits of the program. Differentiate the business objectives from the learning objectives. Learning objectives explain what participants will learn. Learning objectives explain what the capabilities of participants should have acquired by the end of the program, by the end of your presentation. It's what they should learn and hopefully acquire by the end of your presentation. Business objectives describe on-the-job results that application of what they learned will produce. Wow, that's a little bit different there. Thanks, Ingrid. We'll see you later. Business objectives describe on-the-job results that the application of the education program will actually produce. Business objectives explain how the education will help the organization and their participants perform better. So that's really critical to define the two. And what I suggest you do, if you can, if you will actually try to identify the business improvement or the business performance or the business productivity increases that the participant will get and put it at the beginning of your presentation and then put the learner objectives, you can do a double. And those learners hopefully will take your slide deck and go back to their office, back on the job, and share it with their bosses, their colleagues, and people can see the business results that should occur by applying that information. So here's my question for you. I'm going to go back to the very beginning. What are you going to take away from this presentation? What are your thoughts? I know this was a little bit shorter, but that's okay. We don't always have to fill up every minute with talk. What's your big takeaway from this presentation? By the way, you are going to get a PDF that describes in more detail Category A, Category B, Category C of the types of activities. What's going to be your takeaway? What are you going to do with this? And I know you've got 10 days. What are you going to do with this with your presentation? And remember, we suggested maybe only 20% change so that you don't have to feel totally overwhelmed by it. give you some thoughts. I'm waiting on your thoughts to come in and see what you have to say here. Give you a couple seconds to do that. What are you going to take away from this? I'm going quiet to give you time to think. Here we go. Already have case studies. We'll add more time for listeners to think about the case study before we present what we did. Oh, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Shift traditional thinking to improve interest and engagement in the presentation. That's nice too. Thank you. That's nice. Thank you much. And we need to know the audience's business outcomes. You may ask them that. You might ask them that up front to get these. I need to consider how to use these techniques. What are you trying? The audience should experience what you are trying to teach them for themselves. Oh, that's a great point too as well. So, yeah, you know what's interesting. This is good, but it requires a lot of outside work sometimes. You know, it requires work from all of us. So, sure does. So I want to thank you very much. And Julie, I know you've got some more things here to jump in. Add in activities to keep them involved and business learning objectives. Yeah, great. If you can do that. Okay, so Julie, I think you have some other things you want to share with them they need to do, or some other comments here. You can keep your comments coming in. Or what questions do you have about your actual presentation? You may have some logistics questions for Julie as well.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Jeff. That was a great workshop and webinar, and we will be giving these slides deck to you so you can see the tools. There's also, as he mentioned, a PDF that has actual examples. So we'll get you the NPR link as well as the link to this webinar. So if anybody has any questions around logistics or any other ideas you want to have information on to help make your presentation successful in 10 days or less, or 11 days, depending on when you go. Megan, I don't know if there's anything logistically from the speaker standpoint that you want to cover. I just unmuted you.
Well, yeah, so if anyone has any questions about their agreements, which should have been uploaded, I'm still getting a couple stragglers, so if we can get those in, and then PowerPoints are due tomorrow. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We still have a couple speaker changes, so I know there's new people who will be hopefully listening to this webinar. Please, please, please upload your PowerPoints as soon as possible. I think that's it.
And the PowerPoints are to be uploaded up on the Box account, right?
Yes.
They're
so
not sent
www.myac16.org/speak.
Let me just, and maybe we can put that in the email to to them when we send these links out. We'll put that in as well.
Sounds good.
Great. Oh, thank you, Catherine, for letting us know Steve was with you today, too. Would love it when people share a webinar, share a screen, or share a TV. Well, if there are no other questions, if there's changes to the presentation after you upload them, do you need to re-upload them?
Let's hope that you don't have any. But yes, please re-upload them, but please keep it reasonable if it's a minor change. Hopefully you proofread before you upload them, because we don't want to have to sort through multiples of everyone's presentation. So please be mindful of that.
And maybe if you do upload it, maybe say version 2 updated and the date stamp or something like that. That would be helpful, because then we'll just ignore the prior version. That would be a way to make it easy for us to know.
Another way to do it is to put placeholders in your presentation where you might do an activity that you've not thought through yet. Just put a placeholder there and say activity 1, and then worry about that before you get there, exactly the details of it. That's another way to do it.
Great. Good idea, Jeff. Thank you so much. A wealth of knowledge always. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate your time. What is being done with the uploaded PowerPoints? We're going to make them available online. We have a online proceedings that we've been doing since 2009 for attendees at the conference. It's behind the member wall. So if you be a member, you can go in and search for a talk so that you can see what they look like. And if you missed a session and there are 4 sessions you want to go to in one day and you want to catch up on the other 3 you missed, you could go and take a look at it. So those will be posted. I believe this year we're going to do box, and people can go in and sort and look and pull down something they missed, or if they want a refresher on what you covered, they can look at your PowerPoint. And are we sending a confirmation that the moderator received the uploads? I don't know about that. Megan, are you guys going to send an email out saying, you know, that we're missing some, or? Good question.
We can talk about it offline because
yeah.
I personally don't have access to the presentation.
Oh, right. We need to, yeah, they're in the box admin panel, so we need to look into that.
Yep.
We'll get back to you on that, Lance. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you all in Santa Clara.
Thanks, everyone.